Back in the 2000s, Flash games were highly popular on the internet, and there was a wide variety to look through. Whether individual creators were expressing their ideas or companies were making games for their websites, Flash games were all over the place. But you know what else was all over the internet? Touhou Project. Yes, this little franchise has amassed a respectable following over the years, and it isn't hard to see why. Touhou is a series of danmaku games created by Zune that started in 1997, or bullet hell games as they're more commonly known as, though there are also fighting games, as well as official literature, most of which is canon. As such, it's provided a seemingly endless amount of material for fans to work with. Many fan works have become so popular they're practically considered official within the community. So, in other words, if you're a Touhou fan, you will never run out of content to engage with. So why don't we check out some of the old Flash games people made for this series? As can be expected, there are a lot, so I went ahead and grabbed this selection at random. Let's get right into it. This is Some Sorta Cherno game, made using Walfus by Kirby M. That was a very popular means of creating scenes with Touhou characters. As Cherno, we fly up and down to grab ice cream while avoiding red orbs. It's as simple as it gets. But there's another game called Another Cherno Game. It's not as good. What? That's actually the title. Though I think I disagree. I'm only at the title screen and I'm having the time of my life bouncing Cherno everywhere. This is also what you do in the game. You fling Cherno around and grab ice cream. Very simplistic, but also in character. I could see Cherno designing this game and making the others play it, thinking she developed the next big AAA game. But if we can't get enough Cherno, here's Even in a Flash Game FOE. We're thrown right into it, so be ready to fight. Enemies, snowballs, and ice cream are flying at us at the speed of light, so we gotta shoot like there's no tomorrow. Chances are you will die very quickly. I'm fairly certain this is just how Cherno perceives reality. All three of these games are okay, but nothing too over the top, just some simple silliness. What? Silliness in Touhou? Oh, that's unthinkable. This is obviously a very serious series, so let's look at a super serious series of Flash games. This is Alice in Spaceland. It's a space shooter where we control Alice Margatroyd, a popular character who hasn't appeared in any games in a very long time. We shoot our dolls at every enemy that comes flying at us, grabbing power-ups along the way. Then eventually bosses appear, but they aren't too difficult. Except for old McGillicuddy here, of course. Oh great, now there's an army of them. This one boss fight is by far the hardest segment of the game, but aside from it, it's really easy. You have a lot of lives and the game isn't too long, so you could just find a spot to sit in one place and endure hit after hit while you go do something else. Though if you want to speed through the game, the menu gives you the option to fight the bosses by themselves. We also have Ouija mode. Now that should be a familiar name to anyone who used the internet back in the 2000s. Remember this frickin' thing? Yeah, we're about to fight it. Ouija appears in front of Alice Margatroyd and inverts the controls, meaning you have to fight him while adapting to the keyboard alterations. I love Ouija's dialogue too. It's just his eyes and a smile. That is the only way he can communicate after all. So of course, he shoots his eyes at you. You just endure every hit and shoot him in return. Then he eventually goes Super Saiyan. His deadliest move is the ability to shoot Dragon Balls at you. Get used to hearing that, but he isn't too hard. Oh hey Cherno, how's it? Oh, you're dead. Sorry about that. Now while this game might just be your average space shooter, it's fairly decent if you just want to kill about 10 minutes. However, it has a sequel that's significantly more involved. Alice in Spaceland 2 has different enemies and feels more lively, but it also has two modes. You can either play as Alice or Cherno, who shoots frozen frogs. She isn't as fast as Alice, but why miss the chance to play as everyone's favorite Baka Fairy? Like before, we have a mode where we can just fight the bosses, but we also have a new Ouija mode called Meiji, which is supposed to be a Mario version of Ouija. I'm fairly certain the official Mario counterpart was Malio. You know, Mario's sprite from the same game Ouija came from. Talk about a missed opportunity. But anyway, it's the same deal as before. That is, until Ouija shows up and fuses with him. By the way, flashing lights warning for their transformation. You can look back at the screen while I say this phrase right here. Alright, here we go. It isn't that hard of a fight, but it does kinda drag since you really only do the same thing as before. Still, it's charming, and I'm glad it exists. Like the first one, this game is alright. A fun little remnant of an older time. There was also a third one, but it's a little different. I can't exactly tell why, but something about this game just feels a little off compared to the ones before it. I mean, the visuals are cool at least. I like this checkerboard, even if it doesn't really look like space. But I mean, I guess we're in space land, so who knows what that's supposed to look like. So let's move on from this. Staying on the topic of Alice, let's look at a high-quality Japanese game called Alice and Marissa 8-Bit Minigame. This is obviously catering to the popular ship between Alice and Marissa. It started when they were partnered up for the game Imperishable Night, but they didn't seem to get along in it, so obviously fans started to ship them, though they did fall asleep together in one of the bad endings. Either way, the graphics are really good in this, but the game is straightforward. It's in Japanese, but you can gather the general gist of it. As Marissa, you have to impress Alice by bringing her apples and mushrooms that aren't poisoned. How does Marissa find out if something is poisoned or not? By tasting it herself, of course. That's totally canon, by the way. If it turns out to be, you lose a life, so you have to gamble from time to time. But if an object isn't poisoned, Alice will like you more. Obviously, Marissa is so determined to impress Alice that she's willing to risk her life to win her favor. She also punches you if you give her something bad, so I guess that also serves as motivation. This involves a bit of gambling, but the dialogue changes as you increase your favorability, so it's worth playing if you ship these two, and if you understand Japanese. It's pretty good. But another game involving Alice and Marissa is Marippy, a parody of Mappy. Remember that game? The Namco arcade game that was included on my old Windows computer for some reason? I used to play it all the time, and I really enjoyed it, but I also remember it being really hard for my child self. Well, however hard it was a breeze compared to this one. Right away, you get surrounded by Alice's dolls and die. You gotta move fast. Alice and her dolls are chasing you around, probably trying to put you in the Marga truck, so you have to bounce on strings and open doors to avoid them while grabbing all items around the stage. You can only bounce on each string a certain number of times until it breaks, so you have to choose your moves carefully. It's very easy to get cornered too, but sometimes you can shoot a Master Spark through one of the doors. It'll take out any enemies that are standing in its way. The game is a lot of fun, but unfortunately, it is a little hard to land on platforms. A lot of the time, Marissa just won't move when I tell her to while she's bouncing on a string. Maybe she's just stubborn like that. But it inadvertently makes the game a lot harder because I end up using a lot more of a string's lifespan than I intend to. Then we get to see this game over screen. It's really fun, but that's because it's Mappy, and Mappy is also really fun, though it's nice to see everything be all Touhou themed. A game by the same developer, Yuki, is Butterfly Flies for Fry. I have no idea what that means, but you control Yuyuko as you fly around in an almost Flappy Bird style and try to catch up to Mistia. Again, a dynamic based on dialogue from Imperishable Night. Apparently Yuyuko ate Mistia after her fight with her, even though Mistia appears unscathed in future games and manga. Either she used her yokai powers to regenerate, or Yuyuko was just being silly. Not unexpected of her. But you click to keep yourself afloat and eat mochi while avoiding obstacles. Otherwise your belly meter will go down, and we just can't have a hungry Yuyuko. You also control your line of sight by moving the mouse around the screen, so you can see just how close you are to Mistia. Gosh, it must really suck to be a bird yokai in Gensokyo. Maybe Yuyuko should just go eat Aya and save everyone from winding up in unflattering news articles. But speaking of birds, let's move on to a series of games focused on another character. Fusion Quest is centered around Oku, everyone's favorite explosive raven from hell. As Utsuho, we fly through the sky and shoot at Yukuris, but there's a catch. Your reactor has a meter in the lower corner, and you do more damage the more it heats up. However, if it heats up too much, you die. Also, grab the power-ups, they're essential. It's also cool that you can shoot behind you, so sometimes it's best to just let enemies fly by and shoot them from the front. This game's pretty fun, but it isn't actually the full version. Championship Edition is much more awesome. Now we can do this. It's so much fun to pull off. Oh hey Sakuya, what are you doing here? Oh, she killed me. Why would she do that? But the bosses can differ too. Look, I'm fighting a Yukuri of myself. Though you can literally just go beneath it to avoid its shots. Still, not bad. The other Fusion Quest game is called Episode Sakuya. Hopefully she doesn't kill me this time. We can play on easy, medium, hard, or lunatic mode. Then we're thrown into a desolate city. Didn't know this was Touhou Metal Slug here, but we also have Reimu with us. You know, the main character of the whole franchise. Surprised we haven't seen her that much in all these Flash games. And tanks are shooting at us too. But at least we have the Hakure Shrine Maiden to help us fight. If it were the Moria Shrine Maiden, we'd be doomed. This one's fun, but predictably, it's much harder than the two before it. I couldn't even figure out where to shoot to hurt this boss. Either way, it's a good time. But speaking of shooters, this one is called Udange Eien Kairo, or Udange Eternal Corridor. Remember that stage from Imperishable Night? Well, now you're racing and fighting against Reimu. Sometimes characters will cheer you on from the background too. It's also fun to just pummel Reimu endlessly. I sure hope Tewi and Marissa are watching. They'd probably enjoy this fight. Though Reimu is terribly resilient. I'd hate to be a yokai and have to fight against her. Now I understand why she's so fearsome around Gensokyo. But another racing game is Udon Gallop. We're chasing Tewi through the bamboo forest and jumping across platforms. You can jump more than once, but you use up one of your moons. They regenerate quickly though, and if you fall, Cherno makes fun of you. Could there be anything more humiliating? I'm not gonna let this idiot fairy show me up. But you chase Tewi through a few different biomes, so she's determined to get away from you. I wonder what she could have done. But now if you'll excuse me, I'm getting a little sick of this ice fairy, so I'm about to go die as her in another game. But another game that involves inflicting harm upon a Touhou is Stop Slapping Tenchi. Right away, I have to say this title is very misleading. The game seems to require us to slap Tenchi. I call that false advertising. Who could ever forget the Celestial that made the cast of Scarlet Weather Rhapsody come up to heaven to fight her? Anyway, I can only assume she's possessed by a demon and you're trying to slap it out of her, which is why she's happy in the end. But you just drag the mouse across her face to build up the slap meter until she's satisfied, and the game tells you your time. A very strange game, that's for certain, and I feel a little bad after it, so let's play Pet Tenchi instead. Oh. This is very much not what I expected from the title, though the game gives you points for every creative way you find to pet her. Interesting, but Tenchi really needs to sort out her titling issue. Her games are always so misleading. And as we've seen, while these games have been fun, they've also been rather simple. So why don't we check out a significantly bigger one? A really big one, as a matter of fact. This is Reimu Bros, based on the Mario Bros arcade game. It was made by RSG Maker and is far more detailed than you might expect. We choose between Reimu and Marissa to go through 30 levels with. Now just for a fun little fact about me, I always have to go with Marissa when given a choice between the two. Marissa's always been my favorite, and I don't care how basic that makes me. I just love that little witch. You can play with them at this screen even before starting the game, so that's a neat feature. But in the game, you're facing off with every other Touhou character in a zone that resembles the Mario Bros stage. The backgrounds are different locations from the series too. You fight the other Touhou by jumping on the ground beneath them to knock them over, then touching them. Some enemies have more stipulations to be taken down though. You also have special moves, such as your Master Spark. But you can change characters anytime and see the different moves they have. Sometimes you can unlock a new one by defeating a certain character that shows up. One of my favorites is Rumia, who eats the enemies after knocking them down. She also has a hunger meter and can just eat an enemy directly when it empties. I love that little flesh eater. I also like how Yukari opens a gap and throws Chen at you. 10 out of 10 enemy design. And like in Mario Bros, you can jump into this PAL block to shake the stage and hurt everyone. It's really handy when the tougher enemies show up, just as long as you use it sparingly. But as you move through the stages, things start to change, and mini-bosses can even show up from time to time. Look, it wouldn't be Touhou without at least some kind of Danmaku. But you want to know something great about this? Dying has no consequences. Literally, if you get a game over, you just continue where you left off. And that's good, because these stages can go for a surprisingly long time. But it's definitely worth getting through them to see instances like this. Look, I'm Marissa fighting an army of Marissas. And they're stealing things, just as long as they stay away from Reimu's donation box. Oh yeah, you can pick up items to use as weapons too. They help a lot. I also love how you kill Yomu's ghost half before killing her, or how you have to break Kisume's string to knock her down. Fun details like that really keep the game fresh as you move forward. Letty can freeze the ground beneath her, Medicine can leave clouds of poison, and oh my god, why is there a giant Suika? Well, we have her now. Gotta love taking enemies down with the drunk Lil Oni. Hey Futo, what art thou doing in that shopping cart? And you'll find Mystia is one of the worst to deal with because she jumps constantly, only giving you a few chances to take her down. We better get Yuko in here. And see this red thing right here? Yeah, that's a fiery Cherno. She explodes and leaves fire everywhere. The usual Cherno just dies after one hit. I also like how Nitori uses the advanced Kappa technology to become invincible. Sucks to fight against, but good to have on your side. And oh shoot, looks like we're in for an Ichirin boss fight. Is that supposed to be Unzan? He looks a little different in this. Anyway, let's beat up some rabbits. I'm not sure why yet, but Raisin totally has this coming. But the real killer of this stage is Alice, who you have to carefully hit between the two dolls surrounding her. Otherwise you die. And the game really shakes up when you have to fling tables at enemies. You have to be very careful with how you coordinate them because it's super easy to miss. And can there seriously be anything scarier than a gigantic Cherno? Oh no, they exist. But if all these cool features fail to meet your interests, Retro Mode lets you play without them. But where's the fun in that? But Adventure Mode is where the real fun is at. The screen is moving, so you have to run with it. It can even move up, making you have to jump. And it also has Mario blocks you can jump into for items. So yeah, it's great. The features are seemingly limitless in this game, and you can play through it for hours and still find new ones. I recommend giving it a try to see everything for yourself. We really struck gold with this discovery. But before we close this video out, there's one last developer I'd like to visit. Remember back when we played a bunch of Valentine's Day games? We checked out a few by Team Inazuma, who made several comedic Flash creations for the Touhou series. To wrap up this video, let's look at some of the other ones they made. Liar 2013 is similar to the one where we threw chocolates at Adoro Tabo, only this time, Patchouli is getting different messages from a book and flinging them away. The messages are completely random, saying anything from "my tears won't stop" to just screaming. There's a Halloween version where there's a pumpkin on your head and you're attacking birds too. That's neat. There's another called High Kick Low Kick Win where you're Pumpkin Chuli once again. You're fighting Adoro Tabo and you click either high or low depending on where he's blocking. Then you get some silly animation. Patchouli really hates this thing. It must be Marissa in disguise. But if you really want to see Patchouli have a go at Marissa, you can torture her endlessly in Kitsuso. You just pull a string and see Marissa doing some goofy animation, usually suffering. This is Reimu's favorite game to play whenever Marissa borrows from her. We also have another Halloween one called Toriito. You just take different pictures of Pumpkin Chuli at the Hakure Shrine. This one doesn't have as many funny scenarios, mostly just different poses. Though we do have a fishing game where we can catch different monkeys. Yeah, Team Inazuma has a very strange sense of humor. A colored variant of this game is Mystia is an eel sommelier. Now you're Mystia and catching lamprey for your izakaya. Great game, by the way. Unfortunately, I couldn't really find any particularly funny things in this one. It's really straightforward. But the last Patchouli game was made for April Fools. As you can see, Team Inazuma had a thing for holiday games. In this, the moon on Patchouli's hat says, "I'm not a moon." Then you pull a string to draw back a curtain. This unveils what the moon actually is. Oh hey, it's Marissa. She makes a fine headpiece, doesn't she? So yeah, this one's really strange, but it is kinda silly, so I like it. And aside from the Patchouli games, Team Inazuma made a bunch of different colored ones. They're a little more detailed too. In Akiya and Kabochi, Minoriko and Shizuha show you a pumpkin, then you have to select it from a group. If you choose the wrong one, everything explodes. Wow, the fate of all humanity really depends on you selecting the right pumpkin. Aki is also an interesting character because she holds the distinguishment of being the goddess Reimu threatened to eat. See, it's not just Yuko. And in another autumn-themed game, we control Shimyo Maru and run. We turn big to get through big obstacles and stay small to grab collectibles. Oh hey Marissa, darn it you silly witch. Why do you always do this? But for a non-autumn game, this is a game where you punch or hit Nazrin. Yeah, that's the title, but it's exactly as advertised. You hit Nazrin repeatedly and she gets faster every time, constantly trying to get away from you. Soon she gets way too fast to even hit. But don't worry, we'll get her with this. But if you want to continue beating up Touhou, we can kick Racing in Tewi and Udange's Rabbit Sobot 800. As Tewi, you drag the mouse to sprint until you reach Racing and Aaron, the computer mouse, not Nasrin. You can run by them and still win, but it's not nearly as fun as stopping to launch Racing. But a more amusing one is Grassroots Network Attack, Chocolate Mountain. As Kagero, we repeatedly click different meters to launch Wakasagihime into a mountain. Fun fact, Marissa threatened to eat both of them in the same game. But once you send the fish yokai flying, Sekibanki throws a random item at you, such as a shovel you can use to get through the mountain by repeatedly clicking. This one is interesting and cool to see the different animations for, but it's a little difficult to even throw Wakasagihime far enough to reach the mountain in the first place. Cherish it when you can manage it. But the last one is the most detailed of them all. In Sneak into the cute old capital, Chocolate Cave, you control the subterranean animism crew underground. You hit a meter at the right time to make Yugi smash a hole in the ground. Then Parsi falls into it. But don't worry, Kisume is here to save the day. But you have to load your bucket with chocolate beforehand. You can only fill your bucket to a certain height, so you have to choose whether or not to save Parsi or leave her behind. Yugi will be a little disappointed if you don't bring her, so you probably should. I love how you just take her bump off like it's nothing. Then you get a fun little minigame where you ride back up as Kisume, avoiding a ton of ghosts that are flying around. It's really easy and you have a lot of health, but it's still nice to have. You get the best ending if you bring both Chocolate and Parsi, so maybe you shouldn't leave her behind. Such a shame. But either way, that's the last of the Team Inazuma games. By extension, I think that's gonna close things out for this video. We sure saw a lot through our adventure in the Touhou universe. We beat up fairies, caused disparity between Alice and Marissa, traveled to the underground, threw fish at mountains, you name it. All of this is very appropriate when we consider the general energy of the Touhou series. Without a doubt, it's one of the most influential franchises to hit the internet, and remains one of the biggest fandoms one can join on it. With all the official and fan-made media based on the series, it's hard to find yourself bored when engaging with it. No matter the budget or amount of logic contained within them, it's great to look back and see all the creations people made over the years. Touhou will always remain a remarkable series that sparked a community of endless creativity, and that's a beautiful thing. Or should I say, it master-sparked a community of endless creativity. Okay, I'll stop now. So for the time being, be sure to subscribe, follow me on the accounts in the description below, and tune in to our next installment. Thank you for joining me. I will see you in the next memory.